Okay, hi. So, something I've kind of just been thinking about whilst I'm driving is that I've just done a martial arts class and I always feel great after that. Oh, it's the windscreen. I'm wondering where blue sky's coming from there. I thought, I've not got a sunroof here. So, I went to the festival and it was amazing. I got talking to amazing people. And there were a lot of women there, and they sat around a table with me, just in daytime, just having a nice chat. It was great. You could just sit down anywhere, and you think, well, I'll just sit down here, have a coffee, and for half an hour, and I'll go back, brush my teeth, and get ready for the day. And what you always found is you'd sit down, have your coffee, somebody would come and sit with you or near you, and you just start having these amazing conversations, and then more people would come and some would go, and it was just like that, and you were still there 3 hours later with your furry teeth front morning. It was great. There were some masculine women, but all I mean by that is not big butch women, but women who were like really you could tell they got the power, the masculine energy. They were in touch with it, which was really nice. And sometimes what you find, obviously, with women and men who get in touch with that opposing gender energy, although we're all supposed to be a balance of both energies, and we are, but always a balance. Unfortunately, we're raised to believe that we shouldn't be, so we can't stop it. We are that balance of energies, but when we're raised by societal standards and generational trauma and beliefs that a guy shouldn't be too in touch with his feminine side because it's a bit gay, or a woman shouldn't be too in touch with her masculine side because it's butch and it's masculine, and she should be all dolled up and whatever, which she can be and still be in touch with her masculinity, and same for a guy, can be feminine. It doesn't mean anything. In fact, it's pretty beautiful. But I think what we do is then we suppress that energy. So, for an example, me growing up, and many people growing up, I taught that blokes are grrr and tough and boobs and beer and cars and football, and that's all fine. They'll always have that attraction to the opposite sex, and it's good to have hobbies and everything else. But if a guy cries, or I don't know, a guy feels emotional, or a guy wants to wear pink, regardless of sexuality, it's obviously frowned upon, and men don't like flowers and whatnot. So as a guy, one might definitely feel that feminine energy, but instead of understanding it's normal, it's balance, and it's a perfect design by universe, God, source, whatever, they suppress it, and then the energy is suppressed, so they don't cry when they need to cry, they don't wear pink when they want to wear pink, and they don't smell flowers when they want to smell flowers. So they don't allow the flow of the feminine energy that is divinely and rightfully theirs, and suppress it. But the energy needs to flow. So just like electricity, energy will always find its path of least resistance. And I personally think everything's energy, so when we're not allowing it to flow naturally through those feminine qualities that we should organically feel and so are right, it needs to get out. Energy doesn't want to stay inside, it wants to flow through us, through earth, through universe, back to us, after it's been recycled, whatnot. It will get out, and I think this is where a lot of men and women end up finding aggression, and it's their way of releasing that energy that they've not been taught to understand. It's completely normal and natural. So I've got this weird gay energy inside of me, so I'm going to headbutt somebody. I'm going to get in a fight. I'm going to do something manly to counteract this energy that I'm feeling, and it will find its way out. Whether it's, you know, hurting yourself, or alcohol to numb it down, push it down, or drugs, or whatever. I think we're all very highly energetic. Some seem to be a bit more energetic than others, for whatever reasons that is, and those people, when they don't realise that it's normal and they can channel that energy through creativity or something else, it needs its path, and unfortunately that can lead to you know, doing, you know, quite bad things. Anyway, I've gone down a tangent with that. So that's, for me, divine feminine and masculine, and we should all be in perpetual balance with it and just flow. And anyway, so we got into that conversation at the festival, and women were sharing their experience, you know, of masculinity, femininity, and I shared my experience on that. And then it dawned on me, I've always had a big thing about separation. Separation, in my opinion, seems to be the root of all problems, for lack of a better word. And the point I'm getting at is for me, separation also comes in the form of labels. So when we start to label, well, we seem, the mind, you know, the rational, the logical mind, it wants to label everything, and it wants to label it so then it can try and understand it and justify it. So we then say, feminine, masculine, and I said to this group of people that perhaps, though, you know, us sitting here, it's nice to talk and it's nice to have the awareness, and we're you know, we've all got the best intent, but perhaps just the fact that we're labeling these energies as feminine and masculine is part of the problem, because we are saying here's one and here's the other, creating a divide and separation between the two, when in fact, if I was living balanced, or you was living balanced, or we were all living completely balanced with divine feminine and masculine energy, we would no longer talk about the separation between masculine and feminine, because we would be balanced, we would just be, and it would just be energy. And then just now, after finishing karate, I started thinking about the egoic mind, and how you know, once again, there's a divide, there's a duality, there's a polarity, there's a separation between the mind and the heart, between the ego and the soul, between the devil and God, you know, whichever way you want to look at it. You know, the mind works on desire, expectations, and preferred outcomes. It's never really present, the egoic mind, and it's never really in touch with the I am. The I am labels the I am. The mind labels the I am as the personality, the person, the persona that I've built. So the mind says, I am a dad, I am an engineer, I am doing martial arts, I am 33 years old, I am straight, I am this, I am that, you know, and actually that's just the personality, the persona that we've created with the mind and through circumstances in life. Whereas when we take all those things away, we're just left with the present moment, and when we ask, who am I, without all those identities, it's a question that can't really be answered apart from I am what I am, which is similar to the masculine and feminine. When we're balanced, there's no masculine or feminine, it just is energy. And I think Alan Watts and some Taoists and Buddhists, I think their state of, I might be wrong, but I've heard it before somewhere that, you know, when enlightenment's achieved, there's no bad and there's no good. It just is, which does make sense a little bit, because one person's bad is different from another person's bad, and one person's good is different from another person's good. And it's only the application we use which differentiates whether it's bad or good to us from our mind's perspective. It's us that applies the importance to whether something, or it's the mind that applies the importance to something being bad or good. Because paradoxically, something bad can happen, which initially will make the mind suffer, but diamonds, being formed under pressure, it can lead us to a place of suffering where we go through a metamorphosis and come out stronger than ever, or we start channeling energy elsewhere and do amazing things with that, and then we look back in hindsight and see how that suffering was the best thing that ever happened to us. So was it good or was it bad? And it just was, as it's meant to be. So yeah, there's always a polarity there as well with, I'm heartbroken, but then with hindsight I can see that when my heart was broke open, and that's enabled me to achieve great things. You can have a breakdown, but then after that, with hindsight, that breakdown, you can see it was a breakthrough. So the good and bad thing, the divine, the masculine, the feminine thing, once balanced, becomes just is. A soul doesn't have a gender. And then the good and bad thing, is it really bad? Is it really good? Hindsight shows us that, well, it was just as it was meant to be. So there's that. And then back to the egoic mind and not being present. I don't know if I've already mentioned this or not, but a lot of spirituality teaches that, a lot of people do heroic doses of magic mushrooms to experience an ego death, which could also be classed as the dark night of the soul, which could also be classed as that moment of suffering. It's terrible, it's horrible, but then after the egoic death, after the dark night of the soul, we experience a sense of enlightenment or ascending, and we see then that it had to happen. So with the ego being never present and either stuck in the past, reminiscing, wanting what it had because it felt good, because it felt safe, stuck in the future, trying to anticipate what's going to happen, causing anxiety about what could happen, and putting as many things in place, trying to control every situation to make sure that this love it feels, this greatness it feels, this safe place it feels, never stops. It's doing either one of those two things, even though it's absolutely impossible for the mind and the ego, as amazing as it is, to put enough things in place, enough safety nets and contingency plans and control factors in place to stop everything from happening. It can't control everything, and it can't predict every outcome. Even though it tries to. So to correlate that with everything else, it kind of dawned on me today when I left karate, thinking about the ego mind, Michael Singer's book, The Untethered Soul, The Surrender Experiment, which is basically about, it starts off with that voice, that egoic voice inside your head who's worrying about what's happening or is dwelling and depressed on what has happened. It starts off with trying to, for lack of a better way of putting it, ignore that voice. And then it goes into not ignoring the voice, but being the witness of the voice. So the emotions you're feeling from that voice, or the feelings, or whatever that might be, not identifying with those and being self-aware enough from the heart, the soul, to to take a back seat and say, I see that. I see that thought. That is not me. That is not the true I am passing by through my mind or whatever. And instead of identifying with it, letting it, like being in a boat and it's another boat passing by, or like it's a cloud and it's a cloud passing by. And I think when we talk about ego death, I don't think that really happens. I don't think the ego never dies. I don't think that's what it's about. I think it's about like the divine, like the masculine and feminine, like the good and the bad. I think it's about being in union, in coherence with the mind. The mind's a very good tool that we should use, but not let it use us. And I forgot what I was saying now. See, I'm using the mind to try and pull myself back. But to try and surrender to the universal flow. So when the mind's trying to say, you can't do that, you can't do this, you must, we need to stay where we are, we need to stay safe. And I know, because I've felt it, I've definitely lived it many, many, many times, probably the majority of my life, even in the worst places of suffering, places of drinking every night and every day, and places of really being unhappy, so to speak. My ego still wanted to keep me in that place. It's almost like it just doesn't like change. So whatever the situation, it kind of becomes content but sticky. It doesn't sort of move anywhere. And it doesn't want change, because change, is an unknown. And it doesn't like the unknown. So the idea is that we do go into the unknown, but we go into the unknown with faith, with from the heart, and just know our worth, know what we deserve, and trust that everything, I'm exactly where I need to be, when I need to be. So the epiphany that I came to was that, like the masculine and feminine, like the good and the bad, once we achieve that state of balance in those things, we see there's no good or bad. We can't say whether something's good or bad, really. It's only later on we realise always, that it was meant to be that way, even though it might be sad. And the masculine and feminine, we no longer, if we can achieve a union between those and become balanced between those energies, we realise they're not separate energies, that they're just energy. And when we're living in balance with those, we don't need to no longer identify whether it's masculine or feminine. And same with the ego, the mind, the egoic mind, or and the heart, or the soul, the higher self. We no longer, if we can get a balance between them, surely the ego eventually is going to go, right, I know I want to control every outcome, predict every outcome, put safety nets and contingency plans in place to keep me safe, because this feels great. Or I want to sit and think about how good that was and what can I do to get that back. Eventually, once we've surrendered to the heart, the universal flow, whatever you want to call it, even the ego itself's going to go, as much as I want to do all those things, like control everything, actually I can see how it's never really served me, and I've never been in control, and if anything I've always just delayed the inevitable. So maybe the ego eventually, it's not an ego death, but it accepts that I don't need to drive this, I don't need to drive, I can put my feet up in the back, and when I'm needed I'll be used, for reading, maths, and whatever things we need to use the mind for, timekeeping, whatever. And maybe that's it. When we achieve that, and the ego goes, okay, I see you've got this, even though I don't agree with this and that, I'm pretty good at keeping track of what's happened and stuff like that. I'm good at pattern recognition. I can see that since you've surrendered, actually, everything seems to be going okay. So yeah, I'm going to put my feet up and take a back seat. Once that happens, once again, I think we lose the separation. We no longer have to identify the ego and the heart. We just are. We just are. The ego and the heart become in union, in coherence. The mind and the heart, the ego and the soul, the heaven, the hell, whatever, just become in union, and we just are. The good and bad just becomes just is. And the feminine and masculine, once again, it just is. We just live free from that place of, we no longer need to label absolutely everything. Everything is as it is meant to be, and as it should be. I am what I am, and that's that. So I don't know if I'll send this to anybody. It's 21 minutes long, but I didn't have a pen and paper, so I thought I'd just do a vlog